Ladies and gentlemen, it is our great pleasure and honor to welcome all of you here at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow. First, the opening and welcome speech will deliver Professor Barbara Michalak-Pikulska, the director of the Institute of Oriental Studies at the Jagiellonian University.
Assalamu alaikum. Your Excellency, Sheikh Abdullah Salmi, Your Excellency, Ambassador Adam Kułach, His Magnificency, His Excellency, Ambassador Khalid Baomar, Dean of the Faculty of Philology, Excellencies, Professors, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, friends, and students. I have the real pleasure in welcoming you to Krakow, which in our day is gaining a new reputation as a place for international meetings and discussions that promote a better mutual understanding between peoples of different countries. Krakow, the most Polish of all Polish cities, is at the same time the most European among them. This is the result of it having, for many hundred years, broad scientific, cultural, and economic connections with the world, but also it results from the fact that Krakow contributed significantly to the creation of a European heritage. The former capital of Poland, Krakow has maintained till this day its high rank as a cultural center of Poland. The Jagiellonian University of Krakow is frequently perceived from 2 points of view. First, there is a view of Poland's oldest university, founded in 1364 by King Casimir the Great. For over 650 years, the university has been fulfilling its mission by expanding the horizons of knowledge, searching for truth, and passing on the results to subsequent generations. Among the alumni of the academy were the astronomer Nicolaus Copernicus, Jan Kochanowski the poet, Jan Sobieski, King of Poland, or Karol Wojtyła, John Paul II. The second view is the contemporary university linking tradition with new research directions. I am extremely happy that the conference on Ibadi Jurisprudence is being held within the welcoming walls of our Jagiellonian University with its 650 years of history. This is undoubtedly an important academic event in honor of our great Professor Tadeusz Lewicki. It is a meeting of those deeply involved in the study of Arabic culture, history, and religion, which in my opinion represent the heart and soul of the cultural richnesses of nations, and which constitute something that may play an important role in these days of world development. It is my great pleasure to welcome all the conference participants. I express the hope that our meeting will prove fruitful, will lead us to increase our knowledge, and will contribute to a broadening of the general understanding Arab world. Thank you.
Now, his welcome speech will deliver His Magnificence, Professor Wojciech Nowak, Rector of the Jagiellonian University.
Assalamu alaikum. Your Excellency, Sheikh Abdullah Salmi, Your Excellency, Mr. Khalid Baomar, Your Excellency, Ambassador Adam Kułach, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am very pleased to welcome you to Krakow, a historic royal city, the spiritual capital of Poland, and one of its largest and at the same time most beautiful cities in the Poland, in the Europe, I think in the world. The center of the Polish culture, science, literature, and art. The city of 1,000 monuments. The city which in 1978 was granted the UNESCO title of the Monument of the World's Cultural Heritage. I am very pleased to greet you within the walls of the Jagiellonian University, the oldest Polish university and one of the oldest in the Europe. Jagiellonian University was founded by King Casimir the Great, this man on this picture, in 1364. It's our most important data. We are greatly honored that you decided to choose our university as a place of your conference on Ibadi Jurisprudence. However, at the same time, I would like to assure you that it was the right choice. It's here at Jagiellonian University where the Oriental studies has been conducted for nearly 100 years. Here, in 1990, the first Polish department of the Oriental Philology was established thanks to Professor Tadeusz Kowalski's initiative and efforts. At the same department, Tadeusz Lewicki, one of the greatest European experts in Ibadism, led his scientific research works. I sincerely hope that the unique atmosphere of our royal city, the city of writers, poets, scientists, artists, and also the city of students, more than 200,000, will inspire you to discuss with one another what will be presented by all distinguished speakers, put forward new ideas, and face new ambitious challenges. I also hope that your participation in the conference will be an occasion to make new scientific contact and friendship, which will result in interdisciplinary cooperation in the future. I wish you a pleasant and fruitful stay at the Jagiellonian University. I wish you also an excellent stay in Krakow.
Now, his welcome speech will deliver Professor Abdurrahman As-Salimi.
Bismillah. Your Excellency Rector Novak, Your Excellency Sheikh Abdullah Salmi, Your Excellency the Bishop Pieronek, and Your Excellency Ambassador Kułach, Your Excellency Sheikh Khalid Baumar, Professor Michalak-Pikulska, ladies and gentlemen, we are meeting in this conference, which is hosted by this famous university to examine collectively a significant link in the formation of Islamic jurisprudence and its development through human efforts. This conference is the fourth conference on Ibadi studies. It dedicated to the research on Ibadi jurisprudence and to a significant approach toward a study of Islamic jurisprudence in general and its orientation since the early emergence in Islam, 8th century. Ibadi jurisprudence occupied the forefront among the three major Islamic visions between the Sunni and the Shiite among the Shiite school. We shall look at its significance and its the formation process of the Islamic jurisprudence and at the stage of its development. During this conference in Jagiellonian University, we shall also recall most prominent Polish scholars in Islamic studies, Somorawski and Tadeusz Lewicki, who produced key contributions in the fields of Ibadi jurisprudence and early Islamic history of North Africa. They were both model of innovation in Islamic studies in the 20th century, and today their research is still an important reference to researchers regardless of the difference in time. The maturity of their studies and the profundity in their ideas become one of the bases of modern research. We remember them together in their endeavors to explore the unknown, looking for the knowledge and Islamic reasoning. I would like to thank the University Rector and the Professor Barbara Pilowski for hosting this conference, and I must thank Professor Heinz Gaube, Professor Ercilia Francisca, as well as the team in Julian University, Katarzyna Tom and Professor Sebastian Gudomiski, who follow up the steps to hold this conference, whose achievement also attributed to them. Thank you very much.
Now, his speech will deliver His Excellency, Mr. Adam Kułach, Ambassador, Head of Delegation of the European Union to Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates.
Magnificency, Professor Novak, Excellency, Sheikh Abdallah, Professor Barbara, professors, excellencies, distinguished members of academia, dear friends. It's been a great honor to be here in one of the oldest Polish cities, at the seat of one of the oldest European universities. Europe has been in Oman for a very long time, much earlier than European Union, of course, was created. Europeans came as explorers, as friends, as also professors, as those helping Oman to build its modern times. Europeans were coming everywhere to the Gulf. And of course, exchanges started at that time, and they continue until the present day. European Union's relations with Oman and the Gulf, in a formal way, are not very old. So we signed our cooperation agreement in 1988. The Gulf Cooperation Council has become a very important partner for the European Union, and Oman, of course, is one of its most important elements and constituting elements. As we speak, we are now working, European Union and the Gulf Cooperation Council, on a new joint action program where higher education will also have its very important place. Higher education meant not only as teaching students, receiving students, sending professors, but also as a means, as tools to promote mutual understanding, to promote mutual knowledge of each other, which we still, I believe, lack. And you, members of the academia, you have a very responsible task, because you can bring knowledge of the other culture to us in Europe. As you know, the European motto since 2001 is United in Diversity. And Islam also has come as part of its diversity to Europe. But we also need to know more about outside cultures, outside civilizations, and outside other religions. Of course, Omanis, they are very proud of Islam, they are very proud of Ibadi Jurisprudence, of Ibadi School of Islam, and I still believe that we know too little about it in Europe. That's why this conference is so important. And there cannot be a better place to stage, to host the conference, as the Jagiellonian University, which is the oldest Polish university, and which is a university located in the city, which at the times when it used to be the capital of Poland, saw the development of the famous Polish religious tolerance. As you know, Poland was the place where people of different religions, different faiths could come and believe without fear. At the times where elsewhere in Europe, they were prosecuted practically in every place. So I would like to wish you success in your conference. I would like to wish you fruitful deliberations, and I hope that this conference will not be the last in the series of bringing knowledge about Ibadi School of Islam to Europe and in promoting our mutual understanding. Thank you very much. Shukran jazilan.
Now, his speech will deliver His Excellency, Bishop Professor Tadeusz Pieronek.
Magnificencjo, Panie Rektorze, Ekscelencje, Panie, Panowie. Serdecznie pozdrawiam uczestników konferencji organizowanej przez Katedrę Arabistyki Uniwersytetu Jagiellońskiego w Krakowie, poświęconej islamskiemu prawodawstwu ibadytów. Korzystam z obecności na tej konferencji wybitnych osobistości i znawców prawa islamu, by wyrazić zainteresowanie Kościoła katolickiego w Polsce nawiązaniem i wsparciem międzyreligijnego dialogu chrześcijaństwa z islamem. Ten dialog był zawsze bliski sercu papieża Jana Pawła II, niegdyś studenta, a potem także doktora honoris causa Uniwersytetu Jagiellońskiego. W historycznej świadomości Polaków islam był kojarzony przede wszystkim z tureckim Imperium Osmańskim, które zwłaszcza w XVI i XVII wieku usiło zdobyć chrześcijańską Europę. W wojnach religijnych przeciwko Turkom polska armia stawiała tak skuteczny opór, że Polska była postrzegana przez niektórych w Europie jako przedmurze chrześcijaństwa. Ponad 200 lat zmagań z osmańską Turcją oznaczało dla Polaków nie tylko obronę ich własnej tożsamości religijnej, ale także bytu ich wielonarodowego państwa. Dzisiaj, mimo że w Polsce mieszka zaledwie 15 do 30 tysięcy muzułmanów, zainteresowanie islamem wzrosło i ma inny charakter. Polska jest członkiem Unii Europejskiej, w której granicach, zwłaszcza na zachodzie Europy, osiedliły się miliony muzułmanów, nie integrujących się z miejscową ludnością. Taka sytuacja stwarza poważne problemy we wszystkich dziedzinach życia, a ich przezwyciężenie wymaga szczerego i otwartego dialogu, także międzyreligijnego, a może nawet przede wszystkim międzyreligijnego, bo to właśnie religia odwołująca się do ostatecznych racji pozwala dostrzec człowieczą godność w sobie i uszanować ją w innym człowieku. Szacunek dla drugiego człowieka jest niezbędnym warunkiem pokoju między ludźmi i między państwami. Nie może być pokoju między narodami, jeżeli go nie ma między religiami, a ten można osiągnąć tylko w dialogu teologicznym. Pokój to problem etyczny, a nie tylko sprawa polityki i negocjacji. Papież Jan Paweł II wystąpił w 1986 roku z inicjatywą dialogu na międzynarodową skalę, zapraszając przedstawicieli różnych religii świata na modlitwę w Asyżu, głównie na modlitwę o pokój na świecie wstrząsanym wojnami i terrorem. Do drugiego takiego spotkania doszło w 2002 roku, także w Asyżu. To był początek, który wymaga kontynuacji, bo sytuacja, w jakiej żyją dzisiejsze społeczeństwa, bezustannie wymaga troski o poszanowanie człowieka, jego praw i zapobieganie przejawom nienawiści i bratobójczych wojen, ale także niebezpiecznym ideologiom, wśród których współcześnie najgłośniejsza jest ideologia gender, negująca Boga, wartości rodziny, promująca wolność bez odpowiedzialności. Czy dla zapewnienia ludziom bezpieczeństwa, godnych warunków życia, pokoju i sprawiedliwości wystarczy dialog? Zapewne nie, ale jest on niezbędnym warunkiem osiągnięcia tych podstawowych wartości. Papież Jan Paweł II podczas swojej wizyty w Jaundę w 1995 roku zauważył, że wiara, która kształtuje naszą postawę wobec kondycji ludzkiej, skłania nas do okazywania szacunku wszystkim braciom i siostrom, z którymi łączy nas to samo człowieczeństwo, zwłaszcza zaś wszystkim wyznawcom religii tradycyjnych oraz islamu. Dialog międzyreligijny to nie tylko wymiana myśli między pasterzami i teologami. Bardzo często jest on częścią codziennego życia w rodzinach, wspólnotach lokalnych, miejscach pracy, instytucjach publicznych. Na poziomie praktycznym dokonuje się wymiana tego, co najlepsze w każdym człowieku, pomaga się najsłabszym i podejmuje wspólne wysiłki na rzecz postępu człowieka. Ważne jest jednak, by nie zapominać, że dialog życia musi prowadzić do dialogu ducha oraz że prawdziwą inspiracją dla dialogu międzyreligijnego jest Ewangelia i nadzieja zbawienia. Patrząc na dzisiejsze zbrojne konflikty w różnych częściach globu z udziałem chrześcijan i muzułmanów, trudno sobie wyobrazić, by łatwo było zmienić wrogów na przyjaciół i przywrócić ludzkości upragniony pokój, przekonać ją do harmonijnej współpracy dla dobra wspólnego. Nie osiągnie się żadnego rezultatu przy użyciu siły. Potrzebny jest dlatego dialog między religiami, między społeczeństwami, wyzbycie się stereotypowych ocen z obydwu stron i wola pokoju. Mimo że wydaje się to niemożliwe, jesteśmy jako ludzie wiary zobowiązani do podjęcia cierpliwego dialogu, który z czasem niewątpliwie przyniesie owoce. Muzułmanie i chrześcijanie potrafili żyć ze sobą w zgodzie, nie naruszając swojej tożsamości religijnej. Historia daje nam wiele przykładów takiego współżycia, które chociażby na Bliskim Wschodzie, szczególnie w Libanie, pozwalało na ich pokojową kohabitację i na przenikanie się tych dwóch wielkich cywilizacji i to przez wieki. Do tego potrzebny był wzajemny szacunek i tolerancja. Niewielkim, ale cennym przykładem dobrych układów między chrześcijaństwem a islamem jest także Polska, w której mała społeczność muzułmańska pochodzenia tatarskiego osiedliła się w północnych częściach kraju jeszcze w XV wieku. Zachowała swoją wiarę, swoje obyczaje i trwa do dziś. Muzułmanie ci mają też piękną kartę w walce o wolność Polski, której obywatelami są od wieków. Jestem umiarkowanym optymistą, przekonanym, że nie dojdzie do cywilizacyjnego starcia między chrześcijaństwem a islamem, a zwycięży zdrowy rozsądek i odpowiedzialność. Życzę Państwu, by przez pracę konferencji krakowskiej nie tylko pomnożyły dorobek naukowy jej uczestników, ale stworzyły taką atmosferę, która przezwycięża podziały, a wspomaga to, co ludzi łączy. Dziękuję bardzo.
Now, her speech will deliver Dr. Urszula Lewicka-Rajewska, the daughter of Professor Tadeusz Lewicki.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to say how honored I am to have been asked to say a few words about my late father, Tadeusz Lewicki, in front of such eminent audience. Father would have been very happy to know that Kraków, among all Polish cities, has been chosen to host this conference. Although he was a native of Lwów, he considered Kraków his home for almost 50 years. Father was strongly associated with Jagiellonian University. There, he continued the work of Professor Tadeusz Kowalski, my grandfather on my mother's side, the founder of Oriental Studies in Poland. After my grandfather's death in 1948, my father, who has already settled in Krakow after the Second World War, became the head of chair of Oriental Studies, later transformed into Oriental Institute in Krakow. He held this position for almost 20 years until his retirement in 1968. While one might say that it was Tadeusz Kowalski who was my father's inspiration in his studies in Arabic sources to the history of Eastern and Central Europe, one of his two major fields of interest, the roots of his concern for the early history of Ibadi branch of Islam lie elsewhere. Father was born in Lvov in 1906. What is now a Ukrainian city was once second most important city and most important center, cultural center and academic center of Poland. Conquered in the 14th century by King Casimir, it remained a Polish city for 600 years until 1946 when it became a part of the Soviet Union. Due to its location, Lvov was a multicultural city, inhabited not only by Poles and Ukrainians, but also by many other nations, among which the most numerous were Armenians and Jews. Having many school friends among them, Father quite early became interested in and acquainted with Semitic languages and Oriental culture. Nevertheless, he didn't think of them in terms of his future career until much later. His mother, a school teacher of Polish language and Polish history, made sure that both her sons got a thorough education and a patriotic upbringing. My father was to follow in his father's footsteps as a lawyer. His mother dreamed of a diplomatic career for him. So after graduating from school in 1925, he took up law studies at the Lviv University, where he also did medieval and ancient and medieval history. After 3 years of law school, at the age of 23, Father left for Paris where he continued his education studying political science and Oriental languages and preparing for his future career as a diplomat in Muslim countries. At that time, he undertook a journey to Algeria in order to polish up his spoken Arabic. As it turned out, this journey was to change all his life and influence all his future choices. While crossing the Mediterranean, and in those days it was a long and tiresome cruise, Father met a young Algerian student going home for holidays. They spent much time together and talked a lot, and soon it became clear that the young man didn't have enough food to last him through the journey. My father, better prepared for the occasion, gladly shared all his supplies with his new friend. When the ship finally reached African shore, the whole family of his new friend were there waiting for their relative. As soon as they heard of my father, they warmly invited him to stay with them and share their life, as it later turned out, the life of wealthy Bedouin camel breeders. Thanks to their great hospitality, my father spent several months among them, not only practicing the language, but also getting to know their ways of life in detail, for they considered him one of the family. It must have been then that he traveled across Sahara with young men from the tribe leading a herd of camels to Tripolitania to sell them on the camel market there. This is the story that I often heard from my father. Father returned from Africa completely under the spell of the Orient. already knowing that law wasn't what he wanted to profess in life. Back in Lwów, he took up Oriental studies as a disciple of Professor Zygmunt Smogorzewski, a former Russian diplomat who spent many years in Algeria, an Arabist, Islamist, and above all, a specialist, a rare specialist in the history of the Ibadi branch of Islam in North Africa. As a student and later on a junior assistant of Professor Smogorzewski, Father continued his studies and prepared, under Smogorzewski's supervision, his PhD thesis on the medieval history of North Africa. At that time, Father was already deeply engaged in research on the medieval history of Ibadism. In the year 1931, Father received his doctor's degree. Unfortunately, at the end of the same year, Professor Smogorzewski died, and the chair of Oriental Studies in Lwów was closed. That would have left my father unemployed had he not been offered a position of an assistant in the Department of Ancient History. There, he was able to continue his studies in early history of Ibadi community of North Africa. The research that he took over after his patron's, Professor Smogorzewski's death, and the rare collection of Ibadi manuscripts that he partly inherited from his master enabled him to carry on the work. The head of Department of Ancient History, Professor Chyliński, not only took the promising young scholar under his wings, but also helped him in getting 2-year scholarship at the Collège de France and at the Sorbonne. In Paris, Father studied under the direction of 2 eminent Orientalists, Professor Massignon and Professor Marseille. In the meantime, there appeared a chance of another scientific trip to Algeria. Needless to say, Father seized the opportunity to carry out field work there, and spent 6 months in the oases of Ouargla and Mzab, the centers of North African Ibadism, where he engaged himself in the study of more Ibadi manuscripts. On his return to Lwów, Father continued his research, and by the end of 1941, he had already 10 or so important articles on Al-Ibadiyya on his account. In the meantime, Father became interested in the medieval geographical literature of the Arabs and their travel accounts. Those interests led him to Kraków, where he established contact with Professor Kowalski. This prominent scholar soon became his mentor and later on his friend. Some years after the death of Professor, Father married his daughter, my mother. Since then, Father shared his time equally between two spheres of knowledge: the history of Central Europe in the light of Oriental Arabic, especially Arabic sources, and the Ibadi sources to the history of Africa and Ibadism itself. Looking at his bibliography, one can see that Father remained faithful to his what one might call his first love, and that he kept returning over and over again to the Ibadi manuscripts. Some of his latest works concern the Ibadi Chronicles. His very last article, published in Encyclopedia of Islam in the year following the year of his death, was about An-Nukkar branch of Al-Ibadiyya. There's just one more thing I'd like to say. In the late 80s, not long before his death, Father once more got a chance to visit Mzab. Invited by the Ibadi community there, he traveled there with my mother. To his greatest surprise, one of the sheikhs that greeted him there was his companion and friend from whom he met during his first stay in Algeria. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we would like to invite you to a short coffee break upstairs. I would like to remind you that the first session of our conference will start at 11 o'clock. Thank you.